Furthering your education is a life.
All right, we're ready to go.
Okay. I will call to order the special meeting of the Central Oregon Community College Board of Directors for June 25th. We will start with a native lands acknowledgement. COCC would like to acknowledge that the beautiful land our campuses reside on are the original homes of the Wasco and the Warm Springs people. They ceded this land to the U.S. government in the Treaty of 1855. The Paiute people were forcibly moved to the Warm Springs Indian Reservation starting in 1879. It is also important to note that the Klamath Trail ran north through this region to the Great Celilo Falls trading grounds. Descendants of these original people are thriving members of our communities today. We acknowledge and thank the original stewards of this land. May we please have a roll call?
Yes, thank you, Erin. I show that I'm recording, so I think we're still okay, but thanks for your note, appreciate it. Yes, Laura Kreska Cooper.
Here.
Erica Skatvold.
Here.
Erin Foote Morgan.
Here.
Joe Krenowitz.
Yes.
Erin Mers.
Here.
Jim Porter.
Here.
Ellen Unger.
Here.
Bill Taylor.
Here.
Lori Chesley.
Here.
Michael Lalonde.
Here.
Alicia Moore.
Here.
Zach Boone.
Here.
And we've got Chris Centers. And Scott Burge.
That's me.
And Kyle Matthews.
Here.
And Amy Metcalf, and that completes roll call.
Excellent. Thank you, Amy. Do we have any agenda changes? Okay, noting none. Do we have any public comment? Nothing came in on, okay. So we are here for the special meeting was called because we have been, we and other public employers in Oregon have been given an opportunity to participate in the state's employer incentive fund deposit, well, the employer incentive fund. I think that everyone has some background information because you have had an opportunity to talk individually or in twos with Michael Lalonde, and he's provided information, but I just want to sort of recap that this arose from an opportunity that the state provided. It's an opportunity that provides some matching funds to be able to effectively buy down our PERS unfunded liability. And we did not qualify for the first tranche of this that came in April. And then subsequently, Michael was notified that the second tranche was becoming available. It is I don't know if competitive process is the word, but the earlier that you apply, the more likely you are to get funded because the funds are capped and the applications are permitted starting on July 1. So Michael happened to have this offer right around the time the investment committee was meeting, and the investment committee was discussing the limitations that the college has on our investments. We are not able to take our reserves and invest them in the ways that a lot of private individuals or non-public entities might be able to do. And so the investment committee talked about it a little while and got some of the background on Michael, and then asked for more information, more questions, had a second meeting, and then after reviewing it, recommended that the board consider investing some funds out of reserves toward this opportunity, because it does, as I mentioned, provide 25% matching funds from the state up to a cap. We will not get up to that cap because that would probably decimate our reserves completely. And we know that that's not something that we want to do. We know we're very familiar with the policy on reserves we have. So the recommendation from the investment committee was to invest at least 3 and possibly 4 million into this, depending upon how the board felt about our reserves and how far we're willing to go below the reserve policy, sort of weighing all of the other things that the investment committee doesn't weigh. And we had asked, and Michael had run scenarios if we did 2 million, 3 million, or 4 million. Obviously, the more that you invest, the more that you get in matching funds from the state, but the more you invest, the less we have in reserves. So that is sort of my long way of giving you a little bit of a background and just kind of a refresher. Michael, do you want to kind of give an overview of what this does like to our reserves and how quickly or how not quickly we would get back to our desired or our reserves under our policy?
I certainly can. Excuse me. So I'm not going to go through the entire PowerPoint, but the situation is the college currently has an unfunded pension liability of 41.3 million. And the way we actually pay for that is we send a percentage of payroll every month to PERS to pay down that pension liability. With this opportunity, it was something that was created when Kate Brown was in office in 2018, was to provide an incentive for employers that have a unfunded pension liability with PERS to contribute, receive a match from the state of 25%, and then also participate in the returns that PERS provides, which on average is right around 7%, which is much higher than a local government can actually earn on that money, which is right now close to 4.6%. So there's two benefits. You have a higher return on the money that is at PERS, and you have that 25% match. So this year they sent up a $40 million pool. The first tranche was actually dedicated for people who have 200% of payroll in unfunded liability. And then once that period actually went through the process, only 3.6 million was used. So they opened it back up to everybody else that had an unfunded pension liability, including us. So on July 1st, they'll send an email to everybody that has an unfunded pension liability, and we can apply for matching funds. So I think I've covered most of this, but to give you some idea about how fast the percentage of payroll that we have to pay PERS is going up, it's pretty dramatic. So this gives us an opportunity to lower those percentage rates. The different scenarios that Laura was talking about, if we put 2 million, we get a 25% match, so that would be worth 2.5. And this is a graph that is created through a tool on the PERS website, where you basically put in the information of the school or whoever it is. It could be a government or a county, and they actually create a graph. And the blue column is how much you would pay before any deposit into the PERS system. It's called a side account. And the purple column represents how much you would pay if you did deposit money within PERS. So before not having a PERS deposit is the blue, and the red is having a PERS deposit. So you can see the difference becomes pretty significant. But as we go through the other scenarios, the difference between the two just gets greater. I did include, for the board's benefit, an option for $5 million deposit. One of the board members asked me to create this. So you can see that there's a significant difference between the blue, again, which is without the side account, and the purple, which is with the side account. These are the financial calculations I did comparing each of the different dollar values. So on a $2 million investment, we would save 4.1 million over 18 years. On a 3 million, we'd save 6.195. 4 million, we would save 8,260,000, and 5 million, we would save 10,325,000. So it does get significant. Then I took our current projections that we went through during the budget process, and I actually laid upon those projections where we would be with each investment level. So we have 2, 3, 4, and 5 million. Let me blow this up so you can see it a little bit better. I'm sorry about that. And so this is 2 million, and you can see that the impact that has on the ending balance as of 6/30 for each one of these years. And then I also have a reserve percentage calculated for each one of these years. The reserve target, according to our policy, is between 29 and 45%. And if we dip below it, then our goal is to get back above 29% within 2 years. So I think this really lays out the impact. Now, I have to say that if this was an 18-year projection, the savings, even at the higher level, would actually show better reserve percentages and ending reserve balance over time than the lesser investment, just because we get that much savings, which is shown here on each contribution level. So it becomes pretty substantial, pretty quickly off the bat with a 5 million investment. Does anybody have any questions, or did I miss anything pretty big in that quick presentation?
I think, Michael, you probably said this in the one-on-ones, but I think it's important to mention the ERTC in this.
So yes, I did factor in a couple other things that were not in the budget. Currently, we look like we're going to save, or we're going to be overfunded in Madras by about 1.3 million. That's because we received a $500,000 donation last week, I think it was, that we didn't expect. And then we have about 800,000 in construction savings. And then I added the employee retention tax credit that we applied for in November of 2023. And we applied for the second quarter and third quarter of 2021. So for the second quarter of 2021, we received a check for 3.6 million. And then we're waiting for them to process the additional credit for the third quarter of 2021, which should be around 3.1 million. So I added those back, even though I don't know when we're going to receive the 3.1 million. I did get an email from Merkley's office today, who has been helping us navigate this a little bit. And they said they think that they're processing right now, and that should be good news. But again, they don't know when we'll receive it. Did that help, Aaron?
Yeah, thanks. I have another question, maybe for Laura or maybe for you. Laura, you said that the investment committee recommends at least 3 million. I'm curious as to why that is. And just like reading the resolution, it says it recommends a deposit as much as the college can afford. So I wonder if that's where the committee felt good about.
Yeah. I think the reason we suggested 3 million was because I was very conservative about the reserves that we were wanting to keep, because I knew that there was some discomfort in our discussion last time about how much we're dropping below our desired reserves just with the whole Madras thing. I will say the committee was discussing this before we knew we were getting the 500,000 or that we were having savings on the Madras construction. But the consensus was as much as we could do. We really didn't believe there would be much appetite for more than 4 million. Like I said, in part because I discussed how much how much I sensed of discomfort for falling much below what we had described at the last budget meeting as our anticipated reserves for the upcoming year. And again, as I mentioned, we didn't know that we were going to get the 500,000 or have savings on Madras. And we were not counting the ERTC at all. We just didn't factor that in. So. Yeah, I think Alan had a question. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. Actually, I don't have a question as much as I kind of wanted to make a case for this money really is still part of our reserve. And I would say, well, let's look at could we take and say that each year moving forward, apportionment of this, whatever millions we choose, could be that amount of reserve that would be paid that year to be put into PERS. And therefore, we're not really spending this on anything that wouldn't be what reserves would have been spent on anyway. And so we could still call it part of our reserve policy. Michael.
They do account for it separately. I mean, we currently have a side account that was created when we did a pension bond a few years ago. That will be extinguished in 2027. We could track it that way. That's an interesting point. I haven't thought about that. It will be amortized over an 18-year period, so it'll slowly go down.
Michael, I didn't ask you this yesterday. I assume this is a one-time allocation. Like if we perhaps did 3 million, could we add to it later or no? This is a one-time.
Currently, there is 40, what is it now? 36 million available in what they funded this year after the first round. So it really depends on how many people actually apply. So whether that'll run out, I'm not sure. But it is funded through sports betting. Their program will continue through 2042, I believe. So they can open up additional rounds if they decide to do that. Did
Other
that help?
folks? Aaron, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Anybody else? I'll just go with folks I see on the screen. Jim Porter, what are your thoughts?
I think we're foolish not to take advantage of it because of the high yield. And for you folks that haven't been in PERS, integrated PERS, our debt ratios is going to get larger and larger every year because it's built off what the salaries are, right? And so this gives us a chance to really get ahead of that. To what level we want to invest, I think the board would like to wait. I think, well, I want to hear what everybody else says. I think as much as we possibly are comfortable with, it's Michael, these factors, I'm sorry, you said it probably, does not take into consideration the 3.1 million we're potentially getting that Merkley said could we be getting shortly. Is that correct?
It does actually.
It does.
I added
Okay.
that back, like we're going to get it in 26.
Okay.
It does not factor in the fundraising we're still going to do or doing for Madras, right?
Right.
I mean, our hope is that we offset some of those funds that we had to spend on Madras with our fundraising effort, so that we can put some of that back in reserves, but absolutely no guarantees.
Yeah. The only thing I'd like to close with is I appreciate what we were looking at our reserve study percentages. I think what's our 43? You said 45% is an unattainable number, and I'm not sure that's a good operational number, but I mean
It's 29 to 45, I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So to me, it's kind of it's a really wide gap there that I think that the upper end of it, I don't think we ever get to 45. And I'm not sure we'd want to ever get to 45 unless we're looking at a self-sustaining reserve fund that we're really living off of the interest of. And that would be a grand fantasy, but I don't see it happening, at least over the next 4 years. So yeah, I'm in support of it. Just wherever the board's comfortable, the amount the rest of the members are comfortable putting. I'm comfortable up to $4 million.
Aaron Foot Morgan, I'll just go to you next, please, since I see you next on the screen.
I think it makes sense for us to consider 4 or 5 million for this. I don't know if 5 is pushing too hard. but I think organizations that make this kind of investment early, I'm very grateful that they did it. And so the more that we can maximize the opportunity, the better footing we place the college on long term. I balance this with questions of, will we ever be able to expand operations in other places like South County? That's obviously my bigger concern, you know, a long-term concern. And are there other things we can't invest in because we make a decision like this? I would be curious to hear any other staff or board member concerns about that. But on balance, this feels like the right place for dollars we can spare.
Thank you. Erica.
I'm in support. I hadn't thought of 5. I was in support of 4 after going through the numbers and realizing that, yes, it is tapping into our reserves right now, but this is a program that if we take advantage of it right now, there is a considerable savings over long term, and it helps us meet our PERS obligation, which is a promise to our staff. So I am in support, given that we have the funds to invest and what the return would be on and what it would mean to staff members, faculty at COCC in the long run.
Thanks, Erica. Joe?
Yes. I love to get any money from Salem to make our community stronger, particularly COCC. As being a Mr. Tightwad, I would lean more to 4 million. And certainly a conversation that it's quite a jump from 3. But presentation that we've been given by Michael and also the graphing, I feel very comfortable that we can get back into our reserve percentages of our range that we have identified in a very short period of time. And I feel comfortable with what I've seen.
Thank you. Alan?
Yes, I agree with everything I've heard so far. I could be a $5 million investment person. I think this is a great opportunity. And if I doubt if we would, you know, when you look at this and go, there's a lot of conversations just like this all across the state. So we would need to get our application in early and hope for as much as we could get. And I doubt if we'd ever get there. I don't know. But the only thing that I would say is any kind of a negative is that the money is, we lose our flexibility to do what we might want to do in the future with it. But I don't think this money would be flexible anyway, would be paying it towards PERS anyway. So I agree with what everybody else said.
Michael, would you mind putting the spreadsheet again, the chart that shows what our reserves would be over the next few biennium at each of the levels? Aaron Burrs, do you, after hearing other folks, do you have anything else you want to add or ask?
No, thank you. I support a minimum of 4. And when you look at the reserve policy, it gets us back up to that minimum of 29 in the same year, the 4 versus 5. But I also agree that, I don't know, I'm with Joe in a little bit, and like, I don't know why 5, that extra million makes me a little nervous, but I guess I don't have a strong reason as to why that is. So minimum of 4.
Okay. Lori, do you have, Lori, well, actually, before I go to, well, Lori and Michael, let me just, you guys can, what are your guys' thoughts as you do this? I know that there is, you would have to, or maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but the thing that makes me nervous is, you know, spending a large amount of reserves could make some folks some folks outside of this board potentially a little nervous, saying, well, you know, what are we not going to be able to do with those funds? But I also see the advantage, which I think Erica alluded to, which is we are investing in the long-term retirement of our employees, and we want to make sure that that is a viable program for them. So I don't know, Michael and Lori, you guys have thoughts?
I'll wait until the president speaks first.
Well, I think this is the prudent thing to do. And it just isn't a flashy thing to do, right? We're not getting a new something out of it. So it doesn't have that kind of cachet around it. But if you consider it, it really is in the best interest of the college and in particular of our employees. And Michael really brought that home to me as well. So I think you have to decide on the amount. I can be comfortable personally in my next few days with any of the amounts on the screen. When I think about will there be things we couldn't say yes to because we're going to do this? Could happen. Absolutely. Can't deny that. But I think that when I think about most of the things that I've heard the board talk about having an interest in, whether that would be South County, whether it would be, more support for online programs, those are things that can be done incrementally. And I don't know that either one to really see a lot more action on either of those initiatives, and I just use them as an example, doesn't necessarily take millions and millions of dollars. So I'm comfortable. I'm always in an odd way, isn't it kind of a conservative action to take because it's the long-term good of our employees. I don't know, maybe that's not right, but I feel good about it. Michael?
I agree with that. It is a long-term benefit to our employees who are counting on retirement as part of their benefit package. The only thing I would add is that, I'm concerned about deferred maintenance, right? So in these projections, I have 11.5 million being funded between 29 and 31, which is substantial and could really take down the amount of money that we have in deferred maintenance. But we also have the opportunity to do the HEC grant or matching fund in a couple of years, which would even help more. And that was just passed to go up to 12 million match. So that's something we can go after. The other thing I wrote down really quickly is, if we do 5 million, that adds up to, with the match, 6,250,000 that we would have in a side account. That pays down 15% of our outstanding pension liability, which is a big chunk. And if we did 4, it would pay down 12% of that outstanding liability. So I think long-term, this makes a whole lot of sense. I like the way Alan thinks because it's true. I mean, it's a side account that's tracked by PERS. And we can actually see what the number is every year. It could factor into our reserve ratio if we wanted to modify it a little bit. That's pretty much it.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Lori. Let me ask you this question, because I don't know who had the idea to look at 5 million, but I look at those numbers and I'm kind of, wow, saving us $500,000 by, in 2030, 2031, which isn't that far away. That's a huge amount of money that will be spent on lots of other things rather than, the pension liability. But I also worry, I look at the reserve numbers and it makes me a little queasy to spend 5 million just because I've been thinking, I think in the context of 3 or 4 million. So let me ask this question. We apply right now on July 1, if we vote to do that. We don't have to fund it until next spring, right?
Correct.
So presumably by then we ought to know if we've got the ERTC and if we've been successful in our, more of our fundraising for Madras and et cetera. So what would be the ramifications if we were to sign up for 5 now, but by March decide we were only going to fund 4? Are there negative consequences?
According to PERS, I sent them an email with that question, and we can decide to fund less if we want to. We just don't get the match for the higher amount. I mean,
So
so
we
if we
could do
fund,
5 million and then in January or February, reevaluate our actual reserves at the time.
yes. So we could apply for 5 million and then actually submit 4 million in March of 26, and they would match the 4 million with $1 million. Oh, the one thing I didn't mention is we do have contingency in our current budget for $1 million. And then the contingency for last year was transferred to the capital projects fund. So there's $1 million in there. So there's some additional money that we can use if we needed it for deferred maintenance or whatever else pops up in this interesting time we're living in.
Yeah, I'd feel better about this whole thing if I didn't feel like we kind of live in uncertain times. But I feel like death and taxes, PERS is seems to always be there. At least
That's what the Supreme Court says.
Sorry?
That's what the Supreme Court says. Those PERS are always there. So I think that's a good point. I mean, if things just go to hell in a handbasket, the next month we can or next 9 months, we can always readjust, right? That's what I'm hearing.
We have to deposit the funds in March of 26.
So yes, I think we can adjust that amount up until March of 2026. So we got what, 9 months to decide? 8 months?
That makes me more comfortable with 5 million.
Me too. Others?
I'm on board with what everybody's saying.
I'm on board with 5.
Joe, you were a little nervous about 5, though you didn't seem completely opposed. What are you thinking with this idea?
Knowing that we have until 2026 to deposit it, and I feel good with the 5 million. Like I say, being a tightwad, going from 3 to 4 was tough, but with the recent discussion here, 5 is palatable.
I'm ready to do a motion.
Okay, let me ask Paul. Paul, would we say that would we just do 5 million and not include the anything about reevaluating, but just know we could come back and reevaluate? Or could we put into the motion specifically that in January we'll consider whether that amount should be reduced, or should we just, I mean, I don't know, or does that, or can we do either and it depends on what the board wants?
I think you can do either. And I suppose in the interest of, maximum transparency, that including it is appropriate, but it doesn't really bother me one way or the other.
I'd rather not say that, just because this is a fluid situation. They may have a very high number of applicants for the dollars, and
Oh, that's a great point. So make the application, but we all know we can. And we have specifically asked, and Michael has said that no problem, he'll work with Greg when he comes to get some sort of a budget check-in mid-year with us, like around December or January. And so we're going to be relooking at the budget anyway, so that we're better prepared for when we come to the budget cycle starting in the spring.
Michael, I've been doing some quick kind of poking around the PERS website about this and in the statute. Is there a requirement that the board adopt a specific, any specific language in their resolution that you know of? I couldn't find any.
I didn't see anything. So the resolution I put together was just based on what I read and I think what we kind of have to do. So.
Okay, well, does anybody object if we just approve the 5 million, but we know we can always come back before March if it seems necessary to vote to fund less? And ask Michael to monitor and keep us posted if he has such a recommendation at some point.
I have no objection.
I actually support Aaron's position on that. I agree.
All right, well, Alan, were you ready to make a motion?
Yep. Be it resolved that the Central Oregon Community College Board of Directors approves $5 million deposit into the PERS side account and directs the VP of Finance and Operations to file an application with the Employer Incentive Fund for the matching funds, and that we can reevaluate this before March
Oh,
2026.
no, well,
Don't want to say that part?
I think we have an agreement not to do that.
Okay, then
Consensus.
skip that part, and we want Michael to apply for matching funds, period. As written in the document.
Do we have a second?
Second, Aaron.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve this resolution to authorize Michael to apply to seek matching funds at I believe it was the $5 million level. Do we have any further discussion or questions? Okay, noting none, because we're via Zoom, I think I'm going to ask if Amy will do a roll call vote, please.
Absolutely. Great. So voting on the resolution as read by Alan, Laura Kreska Cooper,
Yes.
Erica Scatwall,
Yes.
Aaron Foot Morgan,
Yes.
Joe Kronowitz,
Yes.
Aaron Mers,
Yes.
Ian Porter,
Yes.
Alan Unger.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Amy. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody. I don't think there's anything else we need to get on, but I do want to take a moment just to say that I am very, very appreciative to everybody. Michael, thank you so much for digging up all of that information on short notice to educate us all and for taking the time to meet with everybody. And thank you, everybody, for taking the time to meet with Michael. We knew we needed to try to get this done before the 1st if we could, so we could be at the beginning of the applications, but we didn't want everybody to get all the information dumped on you without time to consider. So I appreciate you taking the time and Michael taking the time to meet with everybody. So thanks all. And anything else anyone's got? Okay, thanks again. We are adjourned.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.